All right, guys, phenomenal morning. Listen, this is a phenomenal morning. If this wasn't like the phenomenal morning, the energy might be a little bit low, but this is the most phenomenal morning of the year for you guys. It is the last edition of the Breakfast with the Brand in 2023. I am your host, Shaan Rais, and of course, I am flanked by the phenomenal Bobby Jackson, and we have Junior Frederick. Visitor, right? Visitor from outer space. We have Junior Frederick with us, right, guys? He wasn't here last week, but he's here to close out 2023 with you guys. This is the Breakfast with the Brand. I'm just super excited to be here. How you guys feeling, man? Talk to me this morning.
Man, Shaan, I'm feeling absolutely amazing, man. The theme for me, like for the entire month, has been recreation of self. So how do you recreate yourself? I know
Okay.
we're moving into 2024. Statistically, like this is around the time when most people start to set goals, but also statistically, by the first 7 days in January, most people have already forgotten about those goals. So for me, it's like, hey, how do you recreate yourself, okay, so that you have a different 2024? And that's what I'm about today.
Okay. Good stuff. 7 days, guys. How do you like that? 7 days. Bobby Jackson, how you feeling, man? You're on mute. You're on mute, buddy.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Let's start. Let's get it right.
Right, right. I'm feeling amazing. I went running this morning like I always do, and I ended up doing like 9.2 something miles. Like I was just going. My
That's
body
right.
wasn't feeling anything. Like super like oiled and rolling. And I say all of that to say keep doing what's working. That's what I've been in the theme of this last 30 days. It's like there's a lot of work you've put in this year and you've gotten some results, especially if you've been coming to breakfast with the brand, your breakfast with the brand every morning, waking up and getting to it. So now take into 2024 those things that worked for you and just double down on what's working instead of trying to jump into too many ponds.
I love it, guys. Listen, I want to tell you this real quick, right? Success is doing what you don't want to do, but knowing that you need to. Success, really being successful, all of those things that you know you need to do, but don't want to do, those are the keys to the new you. Those are the keys. Right. So I want you to think like all the things that you didn't do in 2023 because you just didn't feel like it. It's like the bane of your existence. The things that you run from in 2024 will be those things that guarantee your success. You know what they are. You know what they are. I know what they are for me. Junior knows what they are for him, and Bobby knows what they are for him. Those things are for him. Critical attention to the details, maybe. Right? Removing something from your plate, maybe. Adding people to your business, perhaps. You got to do some hiring. Maybe you got to do some firing. Maybe there's some people hanging around collecting checks that shouldn't be there. The bane of your existence. I want you to think about what's the least passionate thing that you just despise doing or even confronting. I guarantee you that will be the door that unlocks 2024. We'll be right back. This is the Breakfast with the Brand. There's slow growth and then there's scale. There's incremental growth and then there's exponential growth. What I want to talk to you about is adding a zero to you and experiencing exponential scale. Incremental growth says 1 + 1 is 2. Exponential growth says 1 + 0 is 10. Incremental growth says 2 + 2 is 4. Exponential growth says 5 + 0 is 50. Guys, listen, when you add a zero to you, you can add a zero to the marketplace. You can add a zero to the value that you bring. So you can add a zero to your family, add a zero to your legacy. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about incremental, we're talking about exponential. I always say that business is a spiritual game. Just imagine when you combine your skills, your values, your abilities, your talents to something bigger than you, something greater than you, something like the power of exponential. That is adding a zero. Add a zero to your competence, add a zero to your confidence. This is about adding a zero in your life, your value, your industry, and your mission. Let's grow. The reason why I did this and what I do is help leaders to become brands and brand themselves. You train people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. I teach authenticity marketing. If people can take advantage of you, they will in your personal or professional existence.
My biggest takeaway just from day one is you are the brand. I would recommend it to anybody that's really looking to build a personal brand.
Just the brand in general has changed my life. I've grown so much since I've been a part of this.
I see myself in what he does, and I believe in it just as much as I believe in myself.
All right. So we're going to get off to a phenomenal start this morning, guys. Listen, again, excitement, electricity is in the room. Electricity is in the room. The vibration is extremely high. I hope yours is. If not, get in touch with us. Ask about that morning routine that will get you leaping out of bed in the morning. Okay, so Travis asked a question, guys. He says, writing is a neuromuscular activity. Writing is a neuromuscular activity that helps etch it into the brain. Are there any studies that show where typing lies on that spectrum? Extremely interesting question to end the year, right? He says, writing is a neuromuscular activity that helps etch it into the brain. And are there any studies that show where typing lies on that spectrum? Phenomenal. So one thing I'm going to say is that typing is another way of writing. So I would suppose, now this is not the course of study that I've gone into, but I would suppose that it leans itself to the same neuromuscular activity, but on a more advanced level, a more heightened level, guys. So we have become more technologically advanced as the years have gone on. We have become much more technologically advanced. We have updated our operating system. Think about the phone. Like, we have, as a people, evolved. As a species, we have evolved. We have updated our operating system. And if you look at technology now, you see that through ChatGPT. Another evolution. Another step up and step forward in that process. And if you're going to have to learn how to adapt to that. I can remember writing papers on a typewriter. My age, I'm probably telling on it, but yes, I can remember typing on a typewriter in college, in school, actually, and learning what it was and how to do it. And then I had to retrain myself to type on a computer and using a keyboard. Right. And the kids are more advanced than we are. So I believe that it's still a brain strengthening habit that you learn. But I'll look into those studies a little bit deeper. Guys, what do you have on that? That's something different. What do you guys have on that?
That's such a Bobby, did you want to go first?
You can go first, Junior, but I do have a thought on it. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean that's a very interesting question, Travis. That's a really good question. So while I'm thinking about it, like, number one, I don't know of any studies that show that typing have the same effect as writing. But me just analyzing the question, my first question that I'm asking myself would be, number one, why does writing actually have that effect? What is the big difference between writing and typing? And just thinking about it, like Shaan was saying, and Shaan, believe it or not, man, I've used a typewriter as well. I've used a typewriter as well, way back in the day. So we move from, let's look at this logically. So we move from, let's say, ancient Egyptians writing on cuneiform tablets, which is, if you don't know, which is basically clay tablets, right? To inscribing hieroglyphs, to papyrus, to, if you want to fast forward all the way to typewriter, to paper, to computer. And the question becomes like, if we look at it from the perspective of time and evolution, would the people who use the cuneiform tablets, which is like the oldest form of writing known to man, did it etch it more into their brains? Are you looking at it on a spectrum of time? I think it's more likely that we should look at it on a spectrum of engagement. Something that I realized, Sean, when it comes to writing, with the older forms of writing, there's more risk involved. So, for example, if you mess up a clay tablet, it's not like you can just erase whatever you write, right? And then just do it over. If you mess up a piece of writing, so back in the day when we actually wrote letters, you had to cross it out and you didn't want to mess up your writing. With something like the computer, if you mess up something, you just hit the backspace and that's it. You just change it out. So I think what's actually happening, Travis, is that there's a higher level of engagement when it comes to older forms of writing. So your brain is more engaged because you have to be, in order to produce what you want to produce effectively. If you mess up something that is like an older form of writing, it's very tough to correct that. You mess up a hieroglyph, that stuff is there forever, like literally for thousands of years. There's no changing it, there's no updating it, there's no backspace. With the computer, it's easy to do backspace. So, what I would say is, if you want to achieve the same effect with your typing as your writing, you just have to get more engaged. You just have to get more engaged. I think right now we're more distracted. We might be typing up essays and also scrolling on Instagram, Facebook, looking at x.com, Twitter. So we just have to get more engaged as people when it comes to our writing. And I think it could be just as effective as, typing could be just as effective as actually writing on a piece of paper.
Very good. Very good. So we got some comments in the chat. Bobby, let me address the comments in the chat. So first I went and Googled, of course, you gotta like resource the data, access the data. So I grabbed something real quick, put it in the chat about muscle memory. Muscle memory. Now remember, if you work out and you stop working out, then you can come back and work out later and the muscle will just jump back into place. It'll pick up where you left off, basically. If you've trained it into muscle memory. Same, that's typing. If you can type and type without looking, that takes a lot of faith, number one, and number two, resilience, because you have to produce different thinking. And you have to have faith in yourself and trust in the ability to know where they are. I used to watch my mother type without looking at the computer, and I used to be like, how in God's name does she do that? And then watching other people do it, it was like, it was like magic to me, because I kept having to look when I did it myself. But I learned that I had to trust myself and just kind of train myself to look away, which happens when you've grown those different pathways in your brain to know where the keys are. Love the question. Luana states that greater neuroplasticity is involved in writing. Now, this is a phenomenal topic because we're talking about old and new. Old and new, how traditional, how much should we lean on the new? Is the new relevant? Is it weaker? Does it produce more strength? Is it more relevant? And a lot of this is based on opinion and your comfortability level. I love to write personally. Like, it refreshes my brain. I love it more than typing. I know how to type without watching, and I'm good at the word count and all that good stuff. But if I have a choice, I will always choose. As a matter of fact, I've got 5 pens right on my desk right here. And 5 different notebooks. One that's not even open yet, because I love to write. And I think that I retain what I write better than I retain what I read on a screen. Personally, that's just me.
Super exciting question. for me, I would like to approach it from a biological standpoint. I think that it's great for us to remember heredity and for us to remember DNA and things like that. So I believe that writing does have an added benefit, and it helps etch things in, because if you think about musicians, some of the best musicians were born from musicians, people that played instruments before them. So what it normally comes down to is that they have it in their DNA. Really, it's etched into their DNA, into their makeup, and it's passed down to them. So when we think about our forefathers, or we think about, like Junior said, the Egyptians, so on and so forth, all of them passed down skills. So before we had language, we had we had mirror neurons. We used empathy to communicate. And then we got language. And as we got language, we kept passing that down. And then we got writing. And as we got writing, we kept passing that down. And the thing is, we use things that we didn't fashion. We get to stand on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. So all of our forefathers did work. And the work that they did was passed down to our DNA, through our DNA and in heredity. So when it comes to writing, I believe writing is such a powerful tool because we evolved through hand-eye coordination. So some of the first Homo sapiens lived in trees, and they fashioned a lot of their weapons with their hands and their eyes. So the art and act of working with your hands and using your eyes to create something elicits creativity. So I think another reason that it's such a powerful tool is because, as Junior stated again, we went from hieroglyphics, which are pictures, all the way to symbols, all the way to letters, to words. And now that we have letters, we've gone from letters to buttons, to keypads. So it's really nothing more than condensing the process of communicating. But I say all of that to say this: the brain, I believe, evolves over time. So you want to use what you've got the most experience with, what the brain has had the most time to evolve through. So it's had way more time leveraging writing through hieroglyphics, through letters, through pictures, than it has had typing. So I believe that's one of the hidden benefits of writing versus typing, simply because it's in our DNA and you don't have to learn.
Very good. Very good. Now, listen, guys, I love a good question. I love a good question. Now, sometimes the best questions come like from left field. And you're like, how is it relevant? Make it relevant. Make it real for us, right? Make it real. I am always going to keep you grounded in branding, leadership, and business. I am always going to ground you in branding, leadership, and business, and monetizing. That's what I want to do, is add a zero to your understanding so you can add a zero to your positioning. So when we come back, what I'm going to talk to you about is the 4 levels of learning. 4 levels of learning. This is something that I've taught. However, I don't think I've taught it here. So I can't wait to get back and address this topic. Travis, it was a phenomenal question. Listen how we bring it in, tie it in for 2024, and how you can better monetize your brand and make it real, make it tangible, not just transactional, but transformational. We'll be right back. This is The Breakfast with the Brand. Great question. It's very important that you know yourself to the highest degree possible, because it's through knowing ourselves that we're able to know other people. You are the most important person in the room, and the better that you know yourself, the better that you're able to communicate to others. So you're not only playing the game knowing who you are, but you're also playing the game knowing who everyone else is, so that you're not playing blind.
He's extremely engaging with people. He has a fantastic smile, and he's just a very high energy person.
This is called leadership development. So we have to be independently knowledgeable and considerate to know who we are, so we can more effectively know who other people are. As the leader, it's your responsibility to allocate resources in the right places. If you don't know how to communicate effectively, you're losing the battle. All right, so let's get to it right now. I wanted to jump right into this. Let me get that comment off the screen. Okay, great. So Junior gonna be right back. And listen, guys, 4 levels to learning. Number 1 is visual. Number 1 is visual. Reading, first level. You read it, you see it. Okay, great. There it is. That's 1 level of learning. Makes it, I'd say, 1/4 real. The second level of learning is when you write it down. Kinesthetic. Kinesthetic. Now you're writing. The most beautiful thing is that it's physical. It becomes limbic. You can feel it. You're actually doing something. You're activating the knowledge. You're activating what you just read. Number 3, auditory learning. So how does auditory learning take place? Auditory learning takes place when you read what you wrote. Now, the power in this, the hidden hack, the hidden mental hack, guys, is when you read what you just wrote, you make it your own because you're reading it in your own handwriting. So my knowledge becomes your knowledge when you write it down and you read it in your own handwriting. The brain can't distinguish where it came from. The brain doesn't say, oh, you listen to Shaan Rais on the Breakfast with the Brand, and you got this from him, so it's not really yours. The brain doesn't do that. The brain recognizes patterns and familiarity. So the pattern and the familiarity is that it's now in your handwriting. So Luana or Travis or Michelle must have come up with this phenomenal insight. That makes it yours. Now, the third level of learning is when you actually read it to yourself. Because now when you read it out loud, the brain hears your voice. The brain hears your voice. So now it's definitely yours unequivocally. So writing or reading is 25%. Writing it down makes it 50%. 75% it becomes yours when you read it to yourself. Whether you memorize it or not, when you read it to yourself. Now, this is the best part, guys. The best part is when you teach it to someone else. When you teach, that's instructional learning. Nothing more powerful. You don't know that you really retain the information until you can teach it. That's when you're qualified. So think about it in terms of training. There's learning as a scholar, theoretically, learning as a practitioner, actually applying what you're learning, and then there's becoming an instructor or trainer of trainers. The training of the trainers. Now you're teaching the same thing that you formerly did not know. Now it becomes your own. And you're able to put your own impact into it, your own input into it. So it takes on a life of its own. And that's how you incorporate it into your brand. That's how you make it your own. That's how you monetize it, when you teach it. This is so powerful because many people think that they can get rich by listening. Many people in 2023 thought that they could get rich because they heard something. Go to YouTube University and soak it all up and somehow magically just become successful. I guarantee you that doesn't work. That will not work for you. Even if you take notes, even if you write it down, you might learn a little bit more, but it won't make you monetize. When you speak it, when you speak it into existence, you can lock it in. You can become more aware. You can convince your brain that it's yours. And all of these are actions. And all of these actions create dopamine in the mind, in the brain. That's why it feels good when you're learning. But there's still a gap because you're not monetizing yet. Right?
Right.
You know it, you say it, you come around your friends, you're talking about it all the time, but you're not monetizing yet. You feel great. It stimulates the neuromuscular system. You're like, yes, I know this powerful information. And you keep coming to the calls or going to the seminars, but you're not making money yet. It's real for the person who's teaching it, but it's not real for you in the form of bank notes and zeros behind your number because you haven't become an instructor yet. You haven't become a teacher yet. You haven't become an influencer yet. We're going to get deeper into this. We're going to unpack this deeper, but let 2024 be the year that you go from the scholar and the practitioner to the influencer and the instructor so you can make it money.
Yeah, Sean, Lawana asked a very, very interesting question, which is actually going to lead into what I was going to talk about. So I'll go ahead and I'll read it.
Please do.
As she says, Shaan Rais talk about the difference between someone teaching from their own practical application of a topic versus the one who teaches from Google University. What do you think the difference? What do you think is the difference in impact? So I'll answer that question, then I'll pass it over to Sean. So Sean, you spoke about different levels of learning, right? And we spoke about reading, we spoke about watching, we spoke about reading and writing, sort of repeating it back to yourself. I like to think of knowledge, wisdom, understanding. So for me, knowledge is the accumulation of facts. Wisdom is knowing when to use those facts, and understanding is being able to explain those facts in your own way. Um, there's there's a sort of interesting thing going on in today's society where a lot of people are purporting themselves to be experts when they actually haven't done the thing that they're talking about. So for me, I'm like, if you read something, if you learn about something, whatever it may be, let's say business, sales, etc., but you actually haven't done that thing. Like, have you actually learned that thing, or on what is this? On what where are you on the spectrum of learning when it comes to that thing? Because I believe everything is sort of a spectrum, right? Everything is a an evolving spectrum. So for me personally, I think you're lower on the spectrum of learning if you actually haven't done what you're talking about. And to answer Lawana's question, I think the impact is a lot lesser than you talking to somebody who's actually done it. The difference to me is generalized knowledge and specialized knowledge. So general knowledge is basically facts that can be easily attained through research, etc., etc. Like, you can easily get access to those facts. Specialized knowledge, or what makes somebody an expert, is being able to have information or access to information that is not easily attainable. And some things you only learn from going through the trenches. There are very, very minute things that you
There you
actually have
go.
learned by doing. So for me, I don't say I can do something unless I actually do it, unless I've actually done it. That's how I learn. So I learn from reading, I learn from analyzing, etc., etc. But even with the things that I learned from reading and writing, I have to tie my personal experience to whatever I'm reading and writing to build context around the thing that I'm learning. And even then, I still feel like I'm lower on the spectrum of learning as opposed to somebody who has the actual lived experience of going through that thing. Because there are certain things that I can tell you that you cannot find in a course, right? There are certain things that I could tell you that you cannot find in reading a book, or there's a certain way that you handle different experiences that you could only get from somebody who has gone through that thing, successfully come out on the other side, and could sort of help you to analyze what's actually going on. Like, everybody's life is different, everybody's situation is different. So if you approach something from a generalized knowledge, to me, you get generalized results. If you want to get specialized results, you need specialized knowledge to get specialized results. And that's why people seek out mentors and experts in their niche and in their field to give them what they cannot find on the Google, on the Facebook, on the Twitter, or whatever we seek out experts to find out the things that we don't even know to ask. So there's, like Michelle was saying, there's unconscious competence, there's different levels of competence, there's different levels of knowledge. So there are the questions that you know, the things that you know. There are things that you don't know, and there are the things that you don't know that you don't know, and the questions that you don't even know that you need to be asking, that you should be asking. So for me, it's like, hey, you are on a certain level of that spectrum of learning. If you know a thing, if you could explain that thing in your own words, then you're higher on that level. But if you've actually done that thing, you are the highest on that level when it comes to learning.
Very good, very good. I'm going to let Bobby hit this. I've got something when we come back. I'll put some things together and we're going to go into it. I'm going to use the question and this topic right here as an example. So go ahead, Bobby. What you got?
I wrote down connection. So to that question, which one is more impactful? If someone, I just want to reread the question again make sure I got it right. Talk about the difference between someone who teaches from their own practical application of a topic versus the one who teaches from Google University. So for me, it's connection. So seek first to understand before seeking to be understood. That is one of the traits of a effective individual. So if I am listening to you and you're telling me you have a problem, if I don't have the experience, it's very unlikely that I'm going to be able to understand you. And if I don't understand you, then it's going to be very difficult for me to connect with you. So I think most people that try to teach from the YouTube University space are hearing the problem, but they're not connecting deep enough with the pain to actually deliver a solution that drives results. They're giving you a surface level response based on their generalized understanding. And because they don't understand you emotionally, they can't connect the response or the result that you're looking for emotionally. So the reason I believe that the connection piece is so important is because we act often off of emotion. Like if there's no emotional connection there, if there's nothing, there's not a feeling there, what do they say? Unsatisfied needs do not motivate. So if you don't have a need, if you don't have a connection, you're not motivated to take the action. So I think that it's a far better learning experience when you're in the room with a master, so to speak, if you're in the room with a savant, because this person is going to connect with you on a higher frequency and on a higher level due to their deeper understanding of the emotional frustration that you're actually experiencing due to their prior experience with it. And that emotional connection is going to elicit the power and strength of action, which creates intensity. And the intensity in which the action is taken is what produces the compounded return on execution. And I think that's why that's highly, highly effective versus being in the YouTube or the generalized space. You can tell someone something and they can take action on it. But if the action isn't tied to a real emotion, then the intensity of the action is greatly diluted and the return on investment from the action is equally diluted.
All right, guys, stay tuned. Trust me, when we get back, I'm going to make this so plain for you. You're going to be like, I don't believe it's so real. Let's grow. I said Shaan Rais. I'm proud. That's Shaan Rais. Leadership is not the brand they made for us.
Listen, he brought fire, heat. He didn't hold back.
20 years down the line, what I could sell, why not serve first? Service over salary. Branding like a leader closes the gap for people who want branding. Speaking like a leader closes the gap for people who are nervous about speaking. If Steve Jobs would have speculated, we wouldn't have Apple.
He changed lives. He helped people open up their business and start their business.
We are the brand. Some people say, Shaan, should I quit my job? Mentally, yes.
As a speaker too, to be able to learn from him and watch him and game respects game. And I want to have that much game someday.
The right client, pay $500,000 for what you do. You have to be bold in your beliefs.
He has been an amazing asset to this event and a pleasure to work with. very captivating, collaborative, worked very well with the audience.
I want to help you. Put a 0 behind your number, right?
The session was great. How he is online, virtually, he is even more phenomenal in person.
Be the face of change that you want to see. Stop asking questions and start giving demands.
The entire team has just been absolutely incredible. They are a joy to work with. They go above and beyond.
Give yourself a round of applause. Yes, yes, yes. Business is like a game of chess. It's not checkers. If you don't know how to lead with a personal brand, then you're losing the battle.
Everything about Shaan's talk was fantastic. I mean, I got so much from it.
So he was really bringing fire and passion and just love and spirit to let everybody else know how do you become a leader amongst the leaders.
You hold the key in your hand. There is more power in this phone than there was that took the first man to the moon.
His energy, his dynamic information, gave a really great presentation.
I didn't ask for any money. I didn't have an offer. I had a heart to help people and meet them where they were at and find their need and fulfill it.
Shaan is the bomb.
I don't talk theory, I don't talk hyperbole, I don't talk opinion. Nothing I talk is anything but evidence-based.
During the G-Circle retreat in Atlanta, I had the pleasure and the honor of listening to Mr. Shaan Rais. He will not only impact your organization, but he will elevate your team to another level.
When you change you, when you put you into the equation, the whole system is different. I guarantee you, you got the right thing. You are the right person. If you can present yourself in the best way possible, there's no negotiation.
His energy is infectious, and I have so many takeaways from the presentation that I can't wait to get started and implement them today to see the result.
All right, guys, listen. Interesting thing, right? Interesting thing, technology, interesting thing. Watch this. Surface or purpose? Surface or purpose? Are you getting surface or are you getting someone's purpose? Now, you guys know my background, Harlem. I did not want to learn how to box from someone who couldn't box. From someone who heard how to box. You don't want to learn theory. You don't want to learn, how do you say, content. That's what happens on YouTube, a whole bunch of content. Everybody knows what to do content-wise, don't we? Everybody knows if you eat less and you move more, you'll lose weight. But how many people do, and why do we live in the most obese country in the world? And the reason for that is not content. The content is present. It's context. It's context. You must learn from someone who has done the work, or you're just going to learn how to do the work, but not actually do the work. You don't, like, everybody comes to me all of the time. Shaan, I've got this many courses. I've worked with this many coaches. I'm in this many programs. I've spent all this money, but things still haven't changed for me. It didn't click. It didn't monetize. So listen, you can't learn how to make money or transform your business if you're learning from someone who hasn't made money or produced the results and actually transformed their business. What we have now is the hijacking of information. The hijacking of information. So let's say, okay, so Bobby's a CFO. Bobby has gone through 4 years, 6 years of training in finances. He was in the military doing numbers, crunching numbers for 12 years, staff sergeant in the military. Then the last thing he did was Harvard Business graduate school in finances, and this is what qualifies him to be a CFO. So Bobby has a course about being a CFO. I think it's, what is it? Tell me what it is.
Stealth Wealth. Yep, Business Blueprint.
Stealth Wealth Business Blueprint. Now, Shaan Rais's background is leadership, speaking, branding, consulting, executive coaching. Let's just say that I'm interested in learning about Stealth Wealth and the business blueprint and being a CFO, what that really is and how it looks. So let's say I jump into Bobby's course and I go through Bobby's course and I write down content through Bobby's course. And it makes sense to me. It makes so much sense to me that I also want to help other people too in this area. I also want to help other people in that area. So what do I do now? Because I've gone through the course, I fancy myself a CFO or qualified to Bobby's degree. So now I'm out here teaching people exactly what I learned in Bobby's course and passing myself off as a CFO. It works on a surface level. Please write this down, guys. When you are unauthentic, it may work on a surface level, but it will not work on a purpose level. Because when someone starts to ask me questions or tries to go apply what I taught them, it's going to move from a surface to a purpose to a nervous level. Because I'm not going to have answers for them. When they start saying, well, Shaan, in course 3, you talked about X, Y, and Z. Why did you come up with that? How did you come to that realization? And I'm going to say, uh-oh, I'm not Bobby. So I'm going to give some cockamamie story that I hope just satisfies them and gets them to the next point. And this is why you're taking course after course, listening to coach after coach, and spending hours and hours and endless hours on YouTube thinking that you're actually learning something that is applicable. But when you get into the marketplace and you try to throw it against the wall, it slides down. It doesn't stick. And this is because it's not evidence-based. Evidence-based means applicable, tried and tested, proven true through experimentation, evaluation, marketplace results. Marketplace results. That's the difference between content and context. You want something, you want to learn. So I don't want to learn military from a person who has read military books. That's not going to train me for war. That's going to set me up to get slaughtered on the battlefield. Be very, very cautious and careful about who you sign up under to learn the information that you want to learn, and make sure it's applicable and make sure it's monetizable. And the best way to do that is to check the references and check the pedigree of the person that you're learning from.
That's great.
Yes, Shaan. So it goes back to the old saying, it's not about getting a black belt, it's about who you get the black belt from.
Come on, Junior. I was going to say it, but I didn't want this thing to be long-winded. Come on, teach that, please.
Man, listen, it's all about who you get the black belt from. Because I could be a black belt, you could be a black belt. My black belt beats your black belt because of the sensei that I have. So it's all about who you get the black belt from. And if you look at like the most successful people, they all have amazing mentors. They all have amazing mentors. There you go. So you put it in the chat. The name that I was looking for is Lineage. So
Good.
This one learned from that one that did this. So they tend to borrow each other's lived experience, and together, they produce something amazing. Now, when you talk about content versus context, what I see is the people who are successful, they possess what I refer to as meta skills. So, for example, the reason why Shaan can do something and somebody else do the exact same thing, but they may not get the same results, is because Shaan has different or certain meta skills. I have certain meta skills when it comes to writing. So I might tell, let's say Travis, I might tell Travis, hey Travis, this is what you do. Step for step. This is what you do. And then Travis might take that, he might run into the market and he might try to sell that. But if he doesn't master the meta skills that go along with that, he ends up producing something different. So I'll give you an example. In a sales conversation, let's say Sean and I are talking to the same prospect, same pain points. And let's say Sean is giving his presentation in a certain way. Now, there's a difference between talking and speaking. Just as a simple example, there's a difference between talking and speaking. So when you talk, you just talk, okay? So it's like you just say words, words come from your mouth. So for example, let's say I'm talking about branded like a leader, okay? So somebody asked me about branded like a leader. I'm saying, okay, branded like a leader is going to help you to attract your brand. It's going to help you to attract more clients. And I'm just, just there's no intonation, there's no energy, there's no tonality, there's nothing that goes along with the words. There's no substance behind really and truly what I'm saying. There's no emotion behind what I'm saying. And let's say Sean gets on, he talks to the same prospect, and the prospect asks him the same question. Tell me about branding like a leader. And while he's talking, there's intonation, there's a certain rhythm that he uses with his voice. It's almost like he sings when he speaks. It's there's a rhythm. There are certain ways that he pronunciates his words. He slows down in certain areas. He speeds up in other areas. He's using certain revealing questions to get the prospect to say certain things in a certain way. He's raising up the pain threshold, etc., etc., etc. And he's doing all of this in the same breath that somebody else is talking to the same prospect, the same problems. That's the difference between a meta skill. The meta skill of speaking, in addition to the knowledge of sales, is what gets the results. So if you could copy the knowledge of sales, you could write down the steps, you could do
Yep.
whatever. You could have all of the the knowledge that you need to do what you need to do. But if you haven't copied or if you haven't learned those meta skills, then it's not gonna be successful, not gonna be as successful. And that's for all things. And those meta skills, they translate across all areas of life. So that could be something like for me, when I do research or when I write, there's a certain way that I write. Now I might say, hey Bobby, if you want to do it, you need to write. But my writing and Bobby's writing, that's, I guarantee you, two different kinds of writing. In the same way, when Bobby's looking at financials, there's a certain thing that he's doing that I wouldn't know to do, and I can't do because I'm not Bobby Jackson, right? So for me to successfully emulate Bobby Jackson, not only do I have to emulate his mindset, his skill set, I have to emulate his meta skill set so I could be able to successfully do what he does in the way that he does it to produce the same results. So guys, check this out. Information is great, content is great, but content is nothing without context, right? So there's a formula for success. We say the right mindset plus the right skill set plus the right coach equals the right results. The right coach is going to give you the right meta skills, which are those specialized knowledge points that I was talking about that you cannot get from the book. The book will tell you, okay, you need to say this. The script will tell you, you need to say this. The script, if it was written by an amateur, it will not say that you need to do this in this specific way. The book cannot pronunciate the words in the way that you need to pronunciate those words. It cannot give you those real, true meta skills. And Sean, let's talk about even just being a CEO. I study successful CEOs, and something that I all notice with successful CEOs is their ability to think. So, accurate thinking is a meta skill. Most people make business decisions based on assumptions that come from a lack of the ability to think accurately. Now, that may not even be part of the equation when you're considering, like, okay, how do I become successful? How do I get into real estate? How do I get into coaching? Whatever it is, how do I build a coaching business? You could have all the pieces, but without the meta skill of the ability to think accurately, then you end up making the wrong decisions. And that's all you do as a CEO, you make decisions. So guys, that's what I want. That's my 2 cents. Learn those meta skills, get the right mindset, of course, mindset is one thing, skill set is something else. Get the right meta skills, but also get the right coach that has the right lived experience so you could solve problems that you don't even know that you're going to have in the future.
Wow. Jeez. Guys, can y'all give some flames for Junior? Like, for Junior just set it on fire. He just gave us a clinic, man. It was amazing.
All day.
I took amazing notes there, Junior. Phenomenal. And the comment section is lighting up, man. You're giving them exactly what they were looking for. I would add this to it. A person that's gotten results, the people that have really done the work, understand what is known as the dynamic. Okay, the dynamic. The dynamic is the interacting between the various forces that are always at work. So if you are not an expert and you haven't done it and you haven't been in the practical application of executing in the real world, you have no understanding of the dynamic. It's almost like a kid thinking that they can be the parent. The kid has no idea what it means to pay bills. The kid has no idea what it means to have the water due on time. The kid has no idea what it means to be to work on time, to be home on time, to get kids on time. And they don't know that traffic is real. They don't know that red lights are real. They don't know that accidents happen. They don't know that the bank might take this money before they knew it. They don't know that garnishes are real. They have no idea of the dynamic. The dynamic are the constant interacting forces that are constantly taking place at any given moment. Bruce Lee said it like this, and I believe he said it this way because he understood the dynamic. He said, I don't fear the guy that has thrown 1,000 kicks, that learned 1,000 kicks. I fear the man who has practiced one kick 1,000 times. The reason he fears this individual is because this individual understands how to get that kickoff in the dynamic. So what I'm saying is they've thrown the same kick 1,000 times, and because reality is probability, they've thrown that kick, that same kick, in 1,000 different situations. So they found 1,000 different ways to throw that kick effectively. So the difference between a master and someone that's teaching it but's never done it, they haven't been exposed to the dynamics. So when you try to do something and you have a unique situation, they don't know how to get the kickoff in that situation because they haven't done it in that situation. They haven't done it for real. They haven't done it enough. When you think about Michael Jordan and you think about the buzzer beater, you can think about how many times he shot the jump shot, how many times he hit the jump shot over and over and over and over and over again in practice under various different situations, meaning in various different dynamics. If I have 2 guards on me, 1 guard on me, if I'm coming from the left, if I'm jumping from the baseline, if I'm shooting it from the 3-point, there's so many different forces acting on me. If the buzzer is driving down, if I have time on the clock, each one of these dynamics, each one of these forces are constantly being interactive, and they're not always the same. So if someone said, hey, I can show you how to shoot the jump shot, if your response is then, well, what do I do when the time is running down? They're going to say, I don't know. If you say, what do I do if there's 2 defenders instead of 1? You're going to say, I've never been in that situation before. They're going to say, okay, what if I'm coming from the left, one person cuts my lane off, I dump the ball off this way, and then I come back through. Like, if they haven't been in the situation in real time, they have no understanding of the dynamic. And because they don't understand the dynamic, when you are exposed to the dynamic, they can't help you. They can't help you because anything that they say outside of the dynamic, outside of what they've read in context, in content without context. So context being the dynamic, ladies and gentlemen, context being the actual exposure to being in various situations. I can tell you how to save a company when you've run out of money. You got to close the bank and there's no one giving you enough cash flow and you have to find a way to make it happen. Why? Because I know how to get intents of sale in the sense that, okay, we're going to give you this thing as soon as we possibly can. All of these different things, ladies and gentlemen, are extremely powerful. And that will be my take on the dynamic is if you're trying to get content from someone that hasn't been put in the context of the situations, has not been exposed to the dynamic, you're going to likely get a one-dimensional instruction. And one-dimensional instruction does not work in the 3D world.
Might sound great. Might sound might sound real good. As a matter of fact, it might sound better than the people that really know what they're talking about. And that's why sometimes it's easy to sell, because it's flashy. It's like a car that you drive off the lot that falls apart as soon as you get down the block. Yes. Have you ever been in that situation where you bought the box, the shiny box, and it looked so phenomenal? When you got home, you found out it was a box full of rocks. And you couldn't watch the TV because there was no TV. And you couldn't build the business because there was no business. Oh, yes. Travis, like, oh my God, yes. Okay, listen, guys, we might go a little bit over. This is the last session. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Put it in the chat. You guys want to just break, or you guys want a little bit more? Let me know, because I don't want to hold you up if you're ready to run away. If you want a little bit more, just let me know. Talk to me. Talk back to me. And we'll go for a little while longer, right? Because I wanted to express to you and explain to you. Number one, this is what evidence-based looks like. Travis asked a question that would have thrown a lot of people for a loop. However, we've dissected it and gone deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And there's still levels to go deeper. And that's why we're going to stick around for a little while, because it's evidence-based here. So I'm going to show you how this ties into branding, business, leadership, scaling, monetizing. I tell Bobby all the time, scale is slow. Scale is simple. Scale is monotonous. Scale is boring. And that's why nobody can do it. Because they get too impatient and they run away. As soon as they got something that works, they mess it up. They don't give themselves enough time to find out whether something works or not. Not only are they ambidextrous, it's almost like ADHD. They have attention deficit and they can't concentrate. They don't have clarity long enough to let something deepen. And what deepens the impression? Repetition. They haven't done it long enough to teach another person about it, because they don't even have a license. They're driving illegally. Wow. They're driving illegally. And you trust this person to take you home after the party. And they're like, yeah, get in the car with me. I'm going to take you to the promised land. No, they might take you to the other land or the Netherland, right? So watch this, guys. Back to what Travis originally asked. I want to tie in two different levels of learning. So I talked about visual learning and reading, but there's also listening. Visual learning. Visual learning, you're watching something and you're listening. You're watching it on the YouTube screen. You're watching the words go by as you're listening to it. The reason you're doing this is because you know you don't know what you don't know, like Junior said. So that's unconscious incompetence. You're wondering why something isn't working. You think you know what you're doing, but you're realizing that it's not working, but you don't understand that you don't know what isn't working. So you're trying to find out where the gap is. That's unconscious incompetence. You think you know what you're doing. Like, I'm sweet at this. I know what I'm doing. I've done this before. Why isn't it working then? I know about business. Why aren't you scaling then? I know how to coach. Why don't you get clients then? Do you understand? Like, it's super simple to understand that 1 + 1 = 2. If your 1 plus what you think should be 1 is actually a 0, it equals 1, and you're stuck by yourself with yourself. It's like, okay, there's a gap here. There's something missing. So that's why you're looking. So I applaud your looking. But we have to understand that that's the first level. The second level is when you actually begin to write what you hear. You actually begin to do what I call study. So listen, guys, I tell you guys all this inside the leverage that the studying and the teaching and the training takes place after the call, not what we do on the call. It's after the call when we break. Now it's time to go apply. Now it's time to go deeper. You hear the instruction. Now it's time to utilize and apply the instruction, and you're going to come back to the next call just as unbeknownst as you were when you started the first call. We're talking about transference of levels. Unconscious competence to conscious. That's why it doesn't work, because I don't know what I'm doing. So let me get closing like a leader and start going through closing like a leader, not just buying closing like a leader and talking about closing like a leader and theorizing and conceptualizing all of the content that I'm going to learn and how I'm going to apply it and how I'm going to close deals. Those are bullet points. Those are bullet points. You guys have the bullet points without the gun. I'm sorry. Can I say that? Everybody gets bullet points. They give you the bullet points. They give you the bite pieces. They give you the idiosyncrasies, but you don't know how to put the system together. Because after the call, you say, that was a great call. That was a great video. Now what? Let's go get some food. And that's it until the next call. It's what happens in between the calls. If the calls are your birth date and the calls are your death date, it's all about what happens in the dash. And that's where the study and the teaching comes. The study and the teaching comes in between. So what did you do in the hours that you were not on the call? In the hours that you were not on YouTube? How did you apply it? How did you make it real? As you go through this over and over and over again, don't take the course one time, take the course 10 times. Because as you go through it over and over again, what will happen is the same thing that happened to me when I went from the first master's degree to the second to the third. I began to see a pattern. A pattern began to emerge. I didn't just say branding is making money. No, I studied leadership for the life of me. Why? Because I noticed inequalities and gaps in the representation of leadership. So I studied leadership, but going deep and deep and deep into leadership. I'm going to tie this back to your business, your brand, and monetizing. I guarantee it. I go deeper and deeper and deeper into leadership. And I find these 4 components. And these 4 components are self-awareness, self-regulation, emotional intelligence, and authenticity. I'm talking to you guys about process. I'm talking about you guys about perfecting your craft and becoming profitable, becoming profit, not just prophetic, but profitable in your business. So I learned that there were these 4 components in leadership, linchpins. You could not have a leader without them. Self-awareness, self-regulation, emotional intelligence, authenticity. And as I studied the people inside the first incubator for what became branded like a leader, I noticed gaps in what they had as competencies. People did not know them because they did not know themselves. People could not tell how they managed themselves because when it really came to business and applying it, they didn't know how to regulate themselves. So I realized, I said, oh my God, there's a gap. I said, the gap is personal branding. The gap is personal branding because what are the 4 components of personal branding? You got to know who you are. Self-awareness. You got to monitor your movements. You got to know what to say, when to say it, how to say it. You got to know how people attend to you or attune to you. I'm very loud. At times I can be crude and might hurt feelings. So on the first initial meeting, I'm not going to go that deep until you give me permission to. That's self-regulation. Emotional intelligence. People come from different backgrounds. You've got to attune and shift and create a brand that meets people where they are. Emotional intelligence. Everybody's not the same, which means you can't use a cookie cutter. And most importantly, you have to be authentic. You have to be authentic. If your personal brand is built on stilts, it'll fall. If your personal brand is trying to stand on straws, it will fall. If it's on sand, it will wash away. If it's not a part of the bedrock, you will not be successful. So what I learned was that personal branding and leadership had the same 4 core components. Hence, branded like a leader. Hence, personal brand leadership. Hence, coaching, closing, speaking, consulting, marketing like a leader. That's application. That's context. And through the process, we have learned it through high water, low water. And that's why we can teach it. And that's why you're learning it now. And that's why, how do you say, Travis can ask a question that seems unmeshed. It doesn't seem like it connects, but oh my God, does it connect? For those who can see the connections and for those who can see the patterns and dissect it. We've basically taken you on a trip from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. to conscious competence. And the more you do it, the more you come, you're going to find yourself saying things that you didn't know that you knew. You'll be able to teach it. And that's when you know it's become unconscious competence. You won't even know, you won't have to script. That's why people who come through the brand they unlearn that they need a script, and they find themselves saying things that just roll off their tongue like, wow, that was good. And then they start closing bigger and bigger deals and putting zeros behind their number and having this confidence and getting called to speak on news channels and things of that nature. Produce books with looks. This is the Breakfast with the Brand, guys, and this is the last edition of 2023. I hope we've given you adequate food. I think we came back, right? Then we come back with for second servings and second helpings. How do you feel? Are you full? Talk to us. 2024 is coming. 2024 is coming. Will you be prepared? The speed in which, this is the key, guys, the speed in which you can take it from content to context will dictate your success. The key to which you can take it from intangible to tangible, from theoretical to practical, from conceptual to contextual, from the imaginary and the imagination to real and concrete. I'm not giving you examples. We have evidence. It's evidence-based. That's the difference. That's the difference.
Sean, we're gonna keep going a little bit longer.
If you got more, I just want to give the people what they came for and a little bit more. That's what we do here. It's evidence-based. It doesn't have to be extinguished, guys. I really want you to get it because we want to help you make a ton of not just get respect, not just get recognition, not just get brand awareness, but get monetized. We want to help you put it in the marketplace and get results from it. That's what makes it tangible. That's what makes it real. That's what allows you to do something for your family, not the feely good stuff. Not the stuff that sounds good, but you don't know what to do with it. Not the car that looks great, and when you buy it and go down the block with it, it falls apart on you.
Yes, so I do have something for, what you just said. While you were speaking, I was asking myself why. You gave the example of the person that is able to come in, learn the skills, and start closing bigger deals. The question is why? Like what's really going on there? That's the way I think. And when I really analyze it, I think what's actually going on is a shift of beliefs. So it said that entrepreneurs are held back either because they have a constraint when it comes to a belief or when it comes to a skill. So you're either held back by a belief or a skill. So not being able to speak is a lack of skill. Not being able to ask for the right prices can be a lack of skill, but it could also be a lack of belief. And I think what really and truly empowers entrepreneurs to close bigger deals, to do things that they never thought possible up until a certain point, is the ability to shift and to remove limiting beliefs. So to remove a limiting belief, number one, you have to recognize that belief. But how do you recognize the water from inside of the bottle? How do you recognize the inside of the bottle? Or how do you recognize the wrapper if you're on the inside of the bottle? And what I've done personally for myself is to look at things from a different lens, to consider a global lens as opposed to a local lens. So local doesn't mean, if you live in America, it doesn't mean America, it doesn't mean St. Lucia, it means local to you. So it said that if you put a person who has never experienced, let's say, wealth, if you take somebody who's only experienced poverty and you put them in a different environment where they see wealthy things that, denote wealth, then they start to think in a wealthy, quote unquote, way. The problem is that person is still limited to that idea or that new idea of wealth, which may not be wealth to somebody else because that's contextual. So it's like you grew up poor, I take you out, I put you in a rich environment, quote unquote rich. All of a sudden, you start to think in a different way.
That's right.
But the problem is you become limited. You move your limit from the poor, quote unquote, poor environment to the new rich environment. But then you've created a new ceiling for yourself. So what I found interesting is how can you look at a global perspective? So wherever you are right now, if you want to build a coaching business, if you want to build a speaking business, I would ask myself, what is the biggest coaching business that has ever been built? What is the biggest speaking business that has ever been built? Not what is your mentor doing, because you're still limited by the constraints of your mentor. So I say oftentimes that don't think inside the box. Don't think outside the box. Become the box. Because if you think outside of your present circumstance, if you think outside of the box, you're still using the box as a reference. The box is still your reference if you're thinking outside the box. So, taking on number one, a global view, it helps you to see what might be possible for you. In other words, if somebody else has done it, what one can do, another can do. If somebody has built a $5 billion coaching business, does it mean that you can too? Absolutely. There's a possibility of that. So, number one, if you're an entrepreneur right now and you want to close bigger deals, ask yourself, what is the biggest deal that has ever been done in recorded history? Do you see? I saw Bobby face just light up. So do you see how that dramatic? Like, okay, if like, and I actually know the biggest deal that has been done is actually $500 billion in Dubai. Okay, $500 billion deal, $500 billion in one deal. So for me, I'm like, okay, if I'm trying to close a 20K deal, and I know for a fact that there are people closing $500 billion deals, what's the likelihood of me being able to close a 20K deal? It's very high when you change and when you shift your lens and you shift your perspective. And then all you need to figure out now is, okay, it's possible for me. The next question becomes, what is the deficiency in my skill? So what skills do I currently lack that I don't have, that I need to have in order to go to that next level? Because you can only lack a belief or a skill. If you had the belief and if you had the skill, you would have what you want right now.
There you
If
go.
you had the belief and if you had the skill, you would have what you want right now. And the skill isn't necessarily a hard skill, it could be a meta skill. Like I started noticing when I sort of was going through the process of recreating myself, I started noticing like, what are these guys doing that I'm not doing? They don't know more than me. I've taken all the courses, I've taken all the programs. They don't know more than me, okay, when it comes to the actual hard skills. But then I started noticing the little things that are not talked about. Number one, state. So what state are you in? What energy do you have, right? What is the morning routine? Why the morning routine? Okay, how do you maintain energy throughout the conversation? What is the intonation? What is the point of reference? Even so very minute as to what is the perspective of the person coming into the call. If I come into a call with a different perspective from Sean, I guarantee you the result will be different, because Sean is coming in with a perspective of, let's say, possibility, when you might be coming in with a perspective of lack. If you come in with a simple switching perspective of possibility and lack, you don't ask for the same amount. You're not as creative when it comes to creating that deal. The entire thing is different. But the problem is, Sean, this is not something you can see. You can't
Nope.
really see somebody's perspective. You have to develop the skill of being perspicacious enough to be able to notice your lack of skill and to be able to notice the skill
Oh,
in that
hold on,
place.
hold on. What was that word? Say it again for the people in the back down the block around the corner.
It's called perspicacious. And what that means is you being able to notice things. So when you walk into a grocery store, what do you notice? I notice when I walk into the grocery store that all of the fruits are on the right side, all of the important things are in the corners, and all of the stuff that you're not supposed to eat are in the middle of the aisles. So what is your
Ooh,
level
come
of
on.
perspicacity? Like when you buy something, why did you buy it? What made you buy it? Why did you buy now? Why did you feel like you have to buy now? What was the process that made you buy it? Like, people don't ask themselves these kinds of questions, and that's what it really takes to be successful in my mind, because you're always expanding, always growing, and always shifting your perspective. And that's what I wanted to say, guys. So listen, figure out what is the global perspective on what you do. If you're doing a coaching business, what's the biggest coaching business that has ever been built? If you're building a CFO business, what's the biggest CFO business that has ever been built? So shift your belief, shift your perspective using that question, and then ask yourself, what is the differential in the skill between you and that person that is where you want to be? And I guarantee, if you learn those skills, if you're perspicacious enough to figure out what those things are, and you could actually put in the work to learn those things, then hey, you may not build a $5 billion coaching business, but you might come very, very close.
Let's go.
Woo, that boy Junior on fire. I don't know what he's been up to. My goodness, you've been in the gym. No, it's great. It's great. I love it. I love it because it's so inspiring to watch and to be around great speakers, great presenters, great instructors, you know, and just learning and absorbing. Like, it's y'all's breakfast with the brand, it's my breakfast with the brand too. I sit here and I learn and I take notes and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So what I wrote down and kind of my take on this whole experience that we've had this morning, because it's been an experience, is awareness. So a lot of us are simply unconscious. You know, we do things without thinking about them. We wake up and we don't think about what we're going to do. It's like we don't have a plan. Very few people plan their days. We go, we get our coffee, like, talk about being on autopilot. I'll ask you this question. How many decisions do you deliberately make a day? Because if you're a CEO, you should be making decisions. But most of the time we are reacting to our situation and our environment instead of creating our situation and environment. So when I wake up and I don't have a plan, guess what I do? What I've done for the past 6 months. And if I'm only doing what I've been, I can never become who I'm trying to be. And we aren't getting the results that we want to see because we're not becoming who we need to be, because we're not conscious enough to take the deliberate action that moves us toward success. So when we talk about deliberate decision making and we talk about being on autopilot, habits must be cultivated if you want to get to the ceilings and not be stuck in your position. And by ceilings, I mean just break through the ceiling, but you got to get there first. You know, a lot of us look up at the ceilings and imagine the glass there before even getting close enough to the ceiling to find out if it's real. In other words, our habits are so self-destructive and we're so unconscious at times that we don't know that our past has hold of our future. And because we're never being present enough to take control of our identity, take control of our situation, we're almost like ghost riding the whip, so they say. When you get the car going and you hop out of the car and the car just keeps driving. The car is just a ghost rider. And that's our lives at times. We have a ghost-ridden life, meaning the ghost of actions past is dictating the future of one's life. And until you kick in the door in 2024, grab a hold of Christmas past, the ghosts of Xmas past, and say, hey, you're out of here. I'm present now. Like, really say, I'm present now. Look yourself in the mirror and say, the buck stops here. Shaan told me a story. He was like, I am the buck. I am the buck. And when you become the buck, I mean, you can make it a buck. And by make it a buck, I mean 100%. When you become the buck, you can make it a buck. And then you can push it a buck. When I say push it a buck, I mean push a buck on the dashboard. Hit it. On the dashboard, I'm talking about your car. Like, push it, but not your actual car, your business, right? So when I think about all of the things that we've talked about today, I think about if I was present in every day, if I just became present enough to say, today is my day, there's no way it won't be my year. The reason a lot of us get to the end of the year and we say it's not my year, maybe next year, is because we weren't present 365. We slept 365 or maybe 366, 362. And then we woke up for 3 and we said, I'm about to make it happen. I'm about to change the world. I'm about to recreate myself in 3 days. Well, you had 365. And the recreation that you're doing in the next 3 days is notwithstanding, I would still do it. But if you're not going to sustain it and you're not going to dive deep into it and you're not going to pull it presently. So Shaan told me that you've got to be able to pull the future into the present. But if you're living in the past, there's no way. It's not happening. Nope. And we live in the past so often, not because we want to, but because we're not. Oh, I think y'all can handle this. We're not taking responsibility for where we are. We're not taking responsibility for where we are. So when we look around and we say, oh, I'm here because this happened, or oh, things aren't fair, or oh, you know what? This is what I tell my kids. My kids always come to me, Dad, why do I have to wash the dishes? Dad, why do I have to do this? I tell them this. The only thing that is fair about life is that it's unfair for everybody. It's the only thing that's fair about life, that everybody feels that it's unfair for them. And the moment you start looking at what you can do with the present, you can start to be more resourceful in the present. Because here's the thing. Shaan tells us all the time, your money's in your phone. Your money's in your phone. But in order for me to get money out of my phone, I got to be present. I got to pick up the phone in real time, call somebody. He said, I locked people in a room and I told them we're not leaving until somebody makes money. That was a present activity. That was no longer can I get all bent out of shape on who didn't close last week, last month, what my mama called me, what my daddy called me, what my friends called me. I'm not thinking about the future because I ain't leaving this room until I make money. So now I'm stuck in the present and I have to deal with it. And the moment we start to deal with where we are and equip ourselves, like Junior said, with the tools. See, I love what Junior said. I'm not going to go deep, but I'm just going to give you the belief in the skill piece that Junior said and why I think it's so important. I love competitive sports. And I think that pressure is a privilege. And when you have enough pressure on you, something very exciting happens. Adrenaline kicks in. Now, here's the thing. If you don't have the skills and the belief, I'm going to tell you what happens when the adrenaline kicks in. And this is from 12 years of military experience. You panic. You panic. You panic. If you don't have the skills and the training and the belief that you can execute, when the pressure hits, you panic. And when you panic, you react. And when you react with who you've been. You react with who you've been. But when you have the skills and when you have the belief and the pressure, the privilege of pressure hits you, let me tell you what happens. This is what they call it in basketball. They say, I get in my bag. So what that means is that if your bag is deep, that means your skill set arsenal is massive. So when the pressure hits you, you get this Michael Jordan type belief. You're like, I believe I can get this ball into the hoop. And then every skill that has ever been inundated into you, boom, behind the back, boom, cross here, up in the air, hang time, tongue out the side of his mouth, the ball is getting in there. It's getting in there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I believe awareness does. It brings you into the present. And when it brings you into the present and you stay in the present and you say, I've got the skills, I've got the belief, I can't be stopped, you won't be stopped. Period. You won't. Like whatever gets in your way is getting run over. And sometimes that's the attitude you got to have. And that's the attitude that I've had to cultivate this year. That's the attitude I've had to cultivate this year. I'm talking body shots all year. All year. Okay, great. Let's work. That's my piece, guys.
Listen, I love listening to my team talk, man. I really do. I wanted to let this go a little bit over so you guys could like get more from the phenomenal panel, from the people. I'm not speaking about myself, right? I love when I hear my team talk. I love when I can let them talk for an hour and don't have to come myself because they crush it. Give these guys a round of applause if you don't mind. Like I see you guys going crazy in the chat, but just give these guys some recognition. Like everything they've said is a clinic. Everything they said is a clinic. Like, you don't really have to do much more in 2024 than explore what you've just been given. Really, like, if you really just want to stay here and unpack this and utilize what you've learned here, you'll be able to dominate in 2024. No questions whatsoever. Evidence-based. Everybody here is speaking from experience. And let me tell you what experience is. Evidence comes from experience, right? Evidence comes from experience. Experience is priceless. That's what it is. Experience is absolutely priceless. And the lack of experience is very, very expensive. Very expensive. So when you guys are looking for somebody to tell you something, looking for insights, looking for advice, looking for coaching, consulting, looking for someone to help you, veer towards someone who has the experience and has the evidence to help you move forward. I'm going to say one last thing about one thing that Bobby was saying, and then we're done. And you guys can enjoy the rest of your New Year's weekend. If you're in the past, you never catch up to the present. If you're stuck in the past, there's a lot of us that say we're not in the past. No, I'm over that. Okay, great. What's taking place in the present that you're not maximizing? What's taking place in the present that you're not catching a hold of? What got past you? If you're fully in the present, then nothing gets past you. Nothing surprises you. You're not unprepared for anything. Anything. And you're maximizing every single moment that you have because you're fully in the present. If you're 70% in the present, then 30% of you is either in the past or in the future. So if you're in the past, you never catch up to the present. Things just always blindside you, catch you by surprise. Innovations take place. I put a link in the chat that I would think everybody should study before the end of this year. And it's the gentleman from Nokia. The gentleman from Nokia said, we didn't do anything wrong. That's what he said as he handed off, as Microsoft gobbled up his business. He said, we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't do anything wrong. And he meant it. And honestly, he's right. They didn't do anything wrong, but they didn't do enough of the right things. Like innovate, like be disruptive, like take chances, like make investments. They didn't do any of those things. They weren't unethical. They didn't cheat, lie, or steal. They didn't do anything wrong, but they didn't do enough of the right things in business. And that caused them to get eaten and no longer be existent. Number two, number one is if you're in the past, you never catch up to the present. And number two, if you're in the future, you can't maximize the present. A lot of times we have such grandiose hopes and such, phenomenal futures in our minds. But the only place that phenomenal future will exist is in your mind if you don't maximize the present. Mm-hmm. And this is why I said yesterday, you got 3 days left to dictate the next 3 years of your life. How many of you closed deals yesterday? How many of you are going to close deals today? And what phenomenal opportunities lie in wait for you tomorrow? We can't wait to see you next year. Yes, we will be present Monday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard, ready to go. Why? Because this is your Breakfast with the Brand. Love you guys, and we'll see you next year. Let's grow.